Are you sabotaging your productivity without even realizing it? If you've been writing out your task lists like this, only to get overwhelmed by everything on there, then it's probably because you have a key element missing. Looking at this task list, we have a lot of different options for what to do, but no clear direction for what to start with. Of course, we could just pick at random and just go with whatever we kind of felt like in the moment. We could pull things out of a hat, we could use a random number generator, or just go with whatever seems the easiest. But this will often mean that you'll get to the end of the day, 1, not having completed as much as you wanted to, and 2, you'll have key tasks on here which have been left neglected or incomplete. What's missing, or what we need, is having a way to prioritize the task list so that even if not everything gets done, we can feel satisfied and less stressed knowing that the key stuff happened. But how do we prioritize this list? To do this, we're actually going to get the task list out of the way and talk about importance and urgency. When thinking about importance versus urgency, we can sometimes fall into the trap of considering them to be the same thing. But we can definitely have tasks that are urgent and not important, and similarly, we can have ones that are important and not urgent. Urgency is all about time sensitivity. So for instance, does the task have a deadline or a due by date? Importance, on the other hand, is all about whether something matters. Is it something that contributes to your goals, vision, purpose, or is it just busy work? We can put each of those along two sides of what is going to become a 2x2 grid, or effectively a square cut into 4 sections. But thinking about our task list in terms of these two criteria can help us prioritize the order that the tasks should get our attention. Thinking about both of these, we're going to make it so that the increase in each of them is in this top corner, so increasing importance and increasing urgency. And we'll just designate that with some arrows so that we don't forget the direction we're working in. As said, these two criteria are going to give us a 4-square grid, or a structure that's called the Eisenhower Matrix. So in this top box here, we have the important and urgent tasks, while for this box we have high importance but low urgency. In this lower half though, this is where importance is lower, so not important, but for this one it is highly urgent. And then for the bottom box we have low importance and low urgency. Using these different criteria though, so how important and urgent each of our tasks are, we can figure out which tasks should and which tasks shouldn't get our attention. Looking at this, you already know that the important and urgent tasks are the ones that we should probably do first. In fact, we're going to label this one as do, because these are the tasks that we want to action. As we mentioned at the start, when you have a really long task list, there is a likelihood that you're going to get to the end of the day and not everything is going to be done. We want to make sure that we end the day with those important and urgent things crossed off the list, completely finished wherever possible, rather than being left on the list, kind of sacrificed so that we could do other, less important, less urgent things. Thinking about our other quadrants though, this one down here is for our not so important but urgent tasks. These are the ones that where possible, we actually don't want to do them, because we're focusing our attention up here. For these ones, wherever possible, we want to try and delegate those. And I know what you're thinking, Jess, I could not possibly delegate these things. All of the things on the list must be done by me. I completely understand that mindset. I am very much that kind of person. I want to be the person who can be relied on to do it all. But your time and your energy is a precious resource. We want to make sure we're focusing that time, effort, energy in this kind of a category, not on the stuff that is urgent but not actually important. There are likely people or systems in your life that you can push those tasks off onto, so who could we ask for help on those things? In terms of the category up here, these are for important tasks, so high on the important scale, but they're not so urgent. Maybe they don't have a deadline, or the deadline could be way off in the future. Oftentimes, this is where our goals go to die. Those things that you keep putting off and saying, oh, I really want to do that one day. I really want to write that book, or start that business, or get in shape, or anything like that. This is typically where those tasks end up. They're important to us, but they don't have a pressing deadline, so they're not super urgent. If you've seen any content on the Eisenhower Matrix before, you may have seen that this quadrant often gets labeled as decide, as in decide when to do it. I personally prefer to use the word defer, mainly because I just like the way it sounds better, but we do want to be wary of this. We don't want to constantly be putting off the things that are important to us just because they're not urgent. So when I say defer here, I do not mean defer indefinitely. I do not mean put off until you're on your deathbed and you're like, dang, I wish I did that stuff. This category is for scheduling. This is for setting aside a time on your calendar for when those things are going to get done. They are important to us. We want to get them done, but they just don't have that really pressing deadline, so they often get sacrificed in order to do the stuff in this section over here. In terms of our final quadrant though, the not important and not urgent things, this is the stuff we're gonna scrap. We're going to delete it. This is the pointless busy work that ends up on our task list that doesn't actually make meaningful change in our life. It doesn't take us closer to our goals, it's not making progress on things that are actually important to us, but oftentimes these tasks are those easy ones that we use as kind of task filler on our list so that we can get to the end of the day having crossed off a bunch of things, feeling like we did a lot, but then also feeling like we didn't make progress. Let's save ourselves the hassle and just get rid of those from our list. Now, what you may have seen people do is draw up this structure for themselves and write their task list into here, but we already wrote our task list. We don't want to have to write it all out again just so that we can put it in this structure and then also have some of them get crossed off the list. So what we're instead going to do is use this concept, but on the checklist we've already written. For that, we're going to need to bring our task list back and change its structure just slightly. You may have noticed that I put this indented slightly, and that's because we're going to use the columns next to the checklist to indicate the different quadrant they would have sat in. We're just going to turn this one around so that we can label each of the columns. And we're going to make the first one the do column, so that is for highly important, highly urgent. We're then going to have the defer column, that one being for important but not necessarily urgent tasks. The one underneath this is going to be the delegate for urgent but not important tasks. And then the last one is going to be delete. That being for any tasks that are not important and not urgent, they are just filler on our task list. At this stage you might be wondering, oh Jess, you accidentally left a column out here because all of those dots are in the delete column. That can't possibly be right. But this is actually done by design. We are going to start with everything in this task list in the delete column. We're going to assume that everything on here is not important and not urgent until you can actually go through the list and say, okay, yeah, that one actually does have a deadline. Oh, yep, okay, that one actually is important to me. This way, everything starts with a categorization, and we only move up the ones that are actually important or have a deadline. The nice part about this is that we don't have to rewrite the entire checklist and put it into the different boxes on the grid. Instead, we just have to put a dot underneath the relevant column to move each of these tasks out of the delete category. The temptation here can just be to put everything into the do category. Like, oh gosh, yes, it is highly important, it is highly urgent, I must get these things done. But I encourage you to take a critical look at this and think about things like, does this actually have to be done? Does it have to be done by me? What would happen if it didn't get done? Like if I get to the end of the day and it's not finished, what are going to be the consequences for not having completed that task? If it's something like pay your power bill and you're on your 4th notice and your power is going to get shut off if you don't pay it, yeah, that's kind of important and kind of urgent. So maybe that one can move up into the do category, just by putting a dot underneath that column. Something like brainstorm presentation topics, it really depends. Maybe you already have your next 3 presentations already outlined, scheduled, you know what you're talking about, and you're just thinking about ones that are going to happen beyond that in the future. Then maybe that one isn't so important or urgent. Maybe it doesn't need to be done today, and that one can get deleted. For any of the ones you decide are going to stay in the delete category, we're just going to take those entries and cross them off. Typically speaking, I wouldn't put a line all the way through a task because I don't like the way it looks. So you can just put a line through the bullet that you've put next to the task. At least then you know you've processed that entry. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this seems like a lot of work. I feel like I have so much to do that taking time out to do this prioritization, that's just taking away from the time I could be getting things done. To that, I have to say, yeah, okay, I hear you. It does take a little bit of time, especially if this is a new skill for you. Any new skill that we're learning does take time to practice. But what is also true is that prior planning prevents poor performance. By taking the 5 to 10 minutes out of the start of your day to prioritize your task list, you're going to be able to tackle the day with a lot more intention. Rather than splitting your focus across this entire list, you can focus your time, effort, energy more so on the things in the do category, those important and urgent things that actually require your attention compared to just the task list filler, the stuff that might feel easier, simpler, and get something off your checklist, but wasn't really something that was moving you in the direction you want to go, whether that be in terms of goals, projects, general purpose and vision for life. Yes, going through and prioritizing your task list takes time, but it means you don't waste time later on in your day focusing your attention on things that don't matter. If you come to the end of your prioritization and you feel still kind of overwhelmed looking at the entire list, what you can do is take everything in the do column and write that on a different list. Those are kind of like your daily priorities. Work through those ones, and once they're finished, once you've done all of those, come back to this master list and look at the next column over. That next column being for your deferred items. Those ones were important, but they don't have a pressing deadline. We want to still do them. They're important to us. They just don't necessarily have that time sensitivity that things in the do category did. For the items in your delegate category, make sure that you actually tell the people or systems that you're delegating these to that it is their task now. And for anything that got deleted, you don't have to worry about those things. They don't need to be done at all. If you liked the tips shared in this video, then you'll probably also like my weekly newsletter where we share a little bit of advice like this every single week. That one's linked in the description box below. But if you're finding that it's not your task list so much that's overwhelming, but because you haven't even written one and everything's still in your head, then this video is the next one to check out. In that one, we go through one of the best tools for mental decluttering and getting everything out of your head. So click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.